we have a really exciting topic, which is the topic of drought. So just in terms of context, the VI right now is in a moderate drought. Somewhat not unusual, but at the same time, a little bit worrisome in a sense that we've had, a lot of rainwater deficit, or we've experienced some rainwater deficit in December, in January, February, now in March. And we are really entering the driest month. So the month coming ahead might be drier than normal. And we know that because of all the work of all the people that you see here who are part of this effort, who have spent many years looking at the data, climatic data in the VI to really understand what's normal, what's abnormal, and really sort of help us better understand how then we can anticipate future problems such as a potential drought again this year. What we also found, thanks to the work that all these panel participants have done, and we'll probably talk about to some extent today, is that we in the VI are experiencing a drier climate than our parents or grandparents have. The climate is getting drier. The amount of drought events are sort of increasing in frequency compared to the past. So this discussion about drought and water security in general is very important, because without water there is no life. That's simple. So really welcome. Great thanks to all our panelists today. And I will let the panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to go through our talks. Just by order of people who are appearing on my screen, Brad, do you mind to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Brad Rippey. I'm a meteorologist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and coming to you today from near Washington, D.C. I've also been a U.S. Drought Monitor author for more than 20 years, and that's part of what I'm going to be speaking about today. So without further ado, I'll move to the next person and talk with you in just a few minutes.
Thank you. Megan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan. I'm a researcher at the University of Florida. I'll be presenting today on some work that I did in collaboration with Christina and the VI Department of Agriculture on water resource management in agriculture.
Thank you. Dwayne, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dwayne Peterson. I am the Virgin Islands Desk Officer here at the U.S. Department of the Interior. I've been working with Christina and Dr. Guarnell on a drought mitigation water resources plan for the Virgin Islands, and I'm really excited to see where it's at, and I'm looking forward to today's presentation.
Thank you. And last but not least, Royce Criqui.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Royce Criqui. I am a farmer in Bordeaux in St. Thomas area. Been doing it for a little while now, and I'm tired of the drought.
Thank you so much for being here. Christina, can you hear us? Are your problems solved?
No, I can't hear
Christina?
anything.
Okay. Again, apologies for those technical. Christina?
Hi, afternoon. As many of you know, the University of the Virgin Islands Cooperative Extension collaboration with Political Science and Math since 2013 has had a drought program.
Okay.
And this is some of the
We're still having some difficulties hearing you, Christina. So what I'll do, while we solve some of your issues, and you're welcome to come to my office if you can. And so what I'll do is I will let the first speaker present, Dwayne Peterson, if you don't mind going with your presentation.
Okay, sure. Quick question. I wasn't sure, is someone Brad or some, do you have the presentation in your, or do I have to share my screen?
If you don't mind sharing your screen,
Okay.
but if you prefer, I can launch it from my computer, whatever makes you more comfortable.
Okay, let me share my screen. See, the problem is I'm more used to using Teams and trying to figure out how to. Okay.
Shelly, you've got to get. Okay.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, that's not me. That's Shelly.
Christina,
Dr. Guanel?
Oh my God.
Yes.
This
Yes,
is
go
great.
ahead. Go ahead and share the presentation, and I'll just have to ad-lib as we go along because I'm not
Okay.
quite familiar with the Zoom. Oh, you know what? I found it. I'm sorry. I found it. I'm sorry. Okay, share. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. This is a little different, but okay. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Water Resources and Drought Mitigation Task Force. Like I said, my name is Dwayne Peterson. I am the desk officer for Insular Affairs. And initially, I reached out to the governor's office to try to get a water resources and drought mitigation committee or task force set up for the Virgin Islands, so that I can bring my resources from the Department of the Interior to help the Virgin Islands out in this effort. And my office afforded the Bureau of Reclamations a little bit over $1 million to come together with some plans for the territory. And just to give a little background. So I just wanted to thank Christina and Dr. Guanel for putting this presentation together and for allowing me to present. Next slide. So today we're going to talk about the drought problem and the drought situations in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands and the effects that it has on not only farmers and people directly correlated to water resources, but also the economy. Here we have so partners are necessary to build up upon work that DOI is working to accomplish for the agriculture community in the USVI. UVI has worked for the past 7 years to build a network and work together to help us drive research and mitigate. Researchers are working to support efforts of drought. Let me share that with you. Our federal partners, along with stakeholders in the Virgin Islands, take photos for documents in the impacts of drought. Drought is physical, it's visual, and has economic impact. This is a photo that we share from our federal partners so they can see the impacts of drought on the ground. So this photo that you're seeing is actually the soil on a farm in St. Croix, when it is cracked. That means it has absolutely no water, and this is definitely affecting the farming community and the agriculture community in the Virgin Islands. On the next slide, you'll see not only environmental impact, but there's a very important photo because it has economic impact on the vitality of the Virgin Islands. The vitality of the Virgin Islands is tourism. The main aspect for Virgin Islands to survive in today's world is tourism. And the beaches, bringing tourists to enjoy the beaches and the natural resources of the Virgin Islands. And as you can see, the top photo, it's nice and green when the rain is falling and everything is normal. And then the second photo, the impacts of drought. And it's too ugly. It's one ugly drought picture, and I have many other photos that you can see, but I just wanted to compare. Everybody can compare. And this is Megan's Bay in St. Thomas. For those who are not familiar, it's Megan's Bay in St. Thomas. And the little island in the back is called Buck Island. Okay. Next photo. After a 5-year effort in 2019, the USVI was added to the drought monitor. In 2020, USVI received a drought designation, which is very good news for the Virgin Islands. This map requires the collection of all sorts of data. And what is significant here on the upper right for USVI is the yellow dot and the 2 red dots, which is up here. Not sure if you can see it very well, but right up here. Scientists understand rainfall patterns and learn more about drought and rising temperatures. The yellow dot is severe drought, which is St. Thomas, which is the one that you see right here. And the 2 red dots are extreme drought in 2020. So St. John and St. Croix happen to have more drought than the island of St. Thomas. Not sure why, and maybe Christina or Dr. Guanel could go into details as to why, probably the terrain, or not sure why, but St. Thomas has severe drought and St. Croix had extreme drought in the year of 2020.
Apologies, Dwayne, just 1 second. Christina, if you can mute yourself. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. And what is significant here in this map is for the first time in 2020, as said before, the Virgin Islands received the drought declarations for all 3 islands. They've received the drought declaration earlier in a few past years, but it was just for St. Croix, from my understanding. But for the first time in 2020, all 3 islands was able to get that drought declaration designation. Okay. All right. Drought has real impacts and complex and difficulty to understand. Drought impacts agriculture. It impacts dry cisterns. For those of you who are not aware, in the Virgin Islands, most people live off of cisterns, and cisterns are it's like a capture. It's like a built-in vault where people catch rainwater so they can cook, they can clean, they can take showers, and that's pretty much how most of the people in the territory survive. I grew up on a cistern. We didn't have public water. Because we were so far up in the mountains that the Water and Power Authority didn't provide public water to us. But those people that lived in the main town areas like Charlotte Amalie or Christiansted or Tutu Park, they were able to get public water. But like I said, for the most of us, we live off of cisterns. And because of the drought that affected most of us, we had to buy water. And if you see this truck right here, that's how we purchase water from the local Water and Power entity, and they truck water to us, and it's very expensive. Sometimes you have to pay $700 for a whole truckload of water or more, and it depends on how bad the drought is. You know, we've had to get 2 or 3 truckloads a year. So it not only affects agriculture, it affects people's cisterns, it affects the groundwater. It's an emotional effect on people, especially farmers, and it's very expensive and costly. Up in the top right corner, you'll see drought takes in a newspaper. You'll see that drought takes heavy toll on St. Croix farmers, and you'll see a picture of a farmer standing there wondering, "Hey, when is the water coming? When is rain coming?" In the USVI, drought makes it very hard or impossible for agriculture to succeed. It would be great to see agriculture thrive, but we've got to find a way around drought. The easier impact to quantity is when drought leads to cisterns running dry. Fortunately, people have the option of buying trucked water, so they aren't going to suffer, but trucked water is expensive. Groundwater also declines. Many wells support agriculture. Losing water from wells during a drought can be catastrophic. Water delivery companies also draw a lot of groundwater because it's cheaper than desalination water. When their wells dry, they pass much of the added cost of water onto the customers, which makes it very expensive. An impact that goes largely unrecognized is emotional. There are studies that show suicide rates increase during drought, especially in the agriculture sector. This is an impact most of us would agree is real when we think about it in retrospect. Thank God I haven't really heard of any emotional driven effects on farmers in the territory that drives them to suicide, but I can see in other areas where farming is on a larger scale, I can see how that can mentally affect people. Next slide. 7 of the most severe seasonal droughts, which is in the 3 months on record in the USVI, occurred since 2005. Note item 2, we did not get drought declaration due to the lack of data. And line 7, which was first drought designation, which is like I said, March 2015 to May 2015, which was the first time that the Virgin Islands received that drought designation. And again in 2020, where we got for 3 islands due to data collection from community farmers and UVI in coordination with national partners. Okay, here's a look at what was being used once the long-term system blew down post storms. Note, UVI had 18 stations at the time, and since the storm came through in 2017, kind of knocked down some of those weather monitoring stations. But now, from my understanding, there's now 17 stations now available throughout the territory. Some on St. Croix, some on St. Thomas, and maybe 1 or 2 on St. John. Okay. A combination of the reports that's been gathered from the weather stations, 3 have been completed to date. In January, a new edition will be available. It is a combined effort with these partners, federal partners, the NOAA, NIDS, USDA, and University of the Virgin Islands. Every other month, UVI researchers document the data, conditions, and perceptions of the agriculture industry. NOAA is now sharing with the USVI along with Puerto Rico, excuse me, along with Puerto Rico in a drought update for the region. In the future, besides the drought monitoring and map, which shows categories of drought in real time, and the drought update, which can be added to receive, is a tool to inform those interested in drought in the USVI and what the conditions are. The next steps are to work to climate prediction outlook, and also work with National West Coast Climate Center team to get soil sensors back in the USVI. Next slide. Okay, COCORAD stations, which is rain gauges, are manned in the USVI by volunteers and give us all working on drought and flood indicators of what's happening territory-wide. This too is volunteer driven. There are now 22 reporting from the last 5 years. Next slide. You'll see a side-by-side photo of drought in 2020. It started in April 25th, May 9th, and June 27th. You can see that it gets green to lighter brown to brown. And that's how it is almost every year in the Virgin Islands. Scientists and researchers work to anticipate, adapt, and mitigate problems as they occur.
Okay, I'm hearing him talk. Okay.
Excuse me?
Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Farmers, volunteers, and scientists have to work together to mitigate issues we're all facing while we deal with the issues that come from coastal zone flooding, drought, food security, plant drought resistant crops. Flash drought and microclimates are what is currently being moved into the support position for researchers to engage national partners, and so they can better understand drought in the USVI. Also important, flash droughts, severe drought is a severe drought with a rapid onset of 2 to 8 weeks. Next slide. Okay, historical data, daily data from reporters, technology from weather stations all create opportunities for observations to make determinations. This data is 57 years from the St. Thomas Harbor Master Book. All of this info now will be folded into UVI's long-term planning for hazard mitigation strategies as well as future research. This is kept in national environment registers so that others can access it. We are now asking UVI and specifically those working in drought to place that on the UVI EPSCOR website so that we too can easily access the data as a repository for our researchers and government partners to access. Researchers also recently digitized 150 years worth of weather data from St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John as well. And it's important to create a repository of information, especially regarding to drought, because when myself, like Department of the Interior or Bureau of Reclamation or any other department wants to look into historical data from the Virgin Islands, we don't have to go many places. We don't have to go to UVI, Department of Agriculture, Department of Plant and Natural Resources. There's one place that we can go, and a repository website, and we can find all the information that is needed to assist the Virgin Islands. In addition, researchers and via Department of Agriculture are working together to get other systems in place. USGS groundwater monitoring stations just had a maintenance service and are now reporting to view the reporting, go to USGS current conditions for the USVI. Groundwater as 12/10/2020. We will be working on soil sensors in 2021. So thanks to Christina and those who have put together a website of information that USGS can, we can go and find information about drought conditions and groundwater in the territory. Thank you to everyone for listening to this short presentation. As I said, I'm going to continue working with the committee that is formed by Government House. Dr. Guanel, Christina is a part of that committee, and we look forward in providing federal resources to the territory to help them with their drought mitigation and water resources plans, and to help them with groundwater issues and everything. So here is a listing of information. If you want to find out more information on what we're doing as a committee, you can reach out to us, myself, in the first section, Colette Monroe, who is the governor's representative from Government House. Christina and Dr. Guanel's information is there as well. So thank you, everyone. And I will stop sharing my screen. Let me see how to do that now.
Thank you so much for this great presentation, Dwayne.
Okay.
Are there any questions for Dwayne before we move on to our second speaker? So feel free to enter present questions in the Q&A or in the chat. And the only thing I would say is the information we are planning very soon to have a lot of this information presented and a lot of the data presented and discussed today available on the CGTC website, the Caribbean Green Technology website, which is Christina and I's center. So if there's no question, I'm going to ask the second member, Brad, to provide his presentation. Brad is going to talk to us about the drought monitor and all the work that they've done to support the Virgin Islands.
All right, I am getting things set up right now. Can you see my screen and hear me?
We can hear you, we cannot see your screen yet.
Okay, let me, hold on just one moment and let me get that shared. All right, 1 second sharing now. Hopefully everything will be up. Okay.
Yep.
How about now? Good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. It's always a little tricky doing this. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Guanel and Ms. Chanis for the invitation to speak today. And thank you, Mr. Peterson, for setting the stage here for me. You talked a lot about, Mr. Peterson, about some of the impacts. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the drought monitor itself and how it came to the Virgin Islands and what some of you watching today might be able to do to help us make it a better product in the future. Since we can't be together in person, there's my contact information there next to my picture. And we can come back to that, or you can contact me directly if you need any information after today's webinar. The U.S. Drought Monitor has been a live, active operational product for more than 2 decades. And although Puerto Rico was added pretty early in the process in January of 2000, the U.S. Virgin Islands, like so many other things, kind of got left out early in the process. So by the early 2010s, there were some early efforts underway to add not only the US Virgin Islands, but also the US affiliated Pacific Islands, USAPI, to the drought monitor. And those efforts began in earnest around 2013. Then, of course, we had the punishing, crippling drought of the mid-2010s that hit incredibly hard across all the islands in the, not just the Virgin Islands, but pretty much throughout the Caribbean. And that accelerated efforts to bring relief to the Virgin Islands in the form of getting the drought monitor on the US Virgin Islands onto the drought monitor map. Just when things were humming along, we were ready to go live with that, the hurricanes hit in September of 2017. It was a major setback. We lost a lot of the data streams that had been established. So even though the US affiliated Pacific Islands were added to the drought monitor in early 2018, we did have to kind of start from scratch, assembling data streams and contact persons after the hurricanes. Finally, by June of 2019, the Virgin Islands did join the US drought monitor process. The prototype was available as early as 2013. We knew what it was going to look like. It was just a matter of getting all of our contacts and our data streams established. Here's the latest US drought monitor product for the US Virgin Islands. Because of still some shortages in data, we opted to go with a single dot approach. You notice that for most of the United States, we have actual lines drawn, but partly because of the microclimates of the Virgin Islands and partly because of lack of data, we've opted for one dot per major island approach, which is enough to trigger disaster assistance and disaster declarations when necessary. And so it at least gets the Virgin Islands on the map. Sometime in the future, maybe we can draw more precise drought lines, but for the time being, we have settled for the one dot approach. The latest drought monitor shows moderate drought across all three major islands, St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix, as we have had an unusually dry season going back to early December of 2020. Now, this is a fairly important point when you start talking about the drought monitor. The whole premise behind the drought monitor is not to look at things like percent of normal precipitation. It's to look at percentile rankings. For those of you with no background in mathematics, that's okay, because we can explain it pretty simply. And that is, anytime you have a drought, D1 or worse, that describes a situation that would typically occur if you look at all the historical weather data on the order of once per 5 years or less frequently. So in other words, drought should occur about once per 5 years based on historical data. What we have seen in the Virgin Islands over the last couple of decades, and especially since the mid-2010s, is that we've seen more frequent drought than we have typically experienced across the course of history. Drives home the point for those of you who have grown up and lived your entire life in the Virgin Islands or spent considerable time there. It's not the same climate that your parents or grandparents experienced. There have been changes. Now, when you start talking about the higher end of drought, your D3s and D4s, historically, those are very infrequent occurrences. D3 or extreme drought, that's a once in 20 to 50 year occurrence based on historical data. D4 would be a once in 50 to once in a 100 year type occurrence. There's also a category, abnormal dryness, that describes areas going into or coming out of drought. And that's about a 1 in 3 to 5 year occurrence. So that's the whole premise behind the drought monitor. It's percentile rankings. No matter what time period you have or what data you're looking at, you can do these rankings. It's helpful if you have longer time periods, 30, 40, 50 years or more, but we don't have a whole lot of data that goes back that far. We can use it with shorter time periods, as short as 15 or 20 years. With that said, it's pretty remarkable to look at, since the drought monitor has been active for the Virgin Islands, we have seen 4 droughts in less than 2 years. So that's obviously more than what you would historically see, and yet that's what our data is showing. So here for St. Croix, we've seen 4 droughts. 2 have occurred during the dry season, Two have occurred in the summer season. So we've had drought after drought after drought in the last couple of years. The most significant drought peaked in the early summer of 2020. And of course, Mr. Peterson referenced that drought when he was giving his talk. As you move north to St. Thomas, the droughts have also been there. We've seen 3 droughts and 1 spell of abnormal dryness, but nevertheless, it shows that we have seen very frequent dry spells over the last couple of years. And finally, for St. John, we've also had some significant droughts, 4 of them over the last 2 years, reflecting a bit of climate change that we're seeing. One of the factors, it's not just rainfall, one of the factors that we've been seeing in recent years is the fact that it has been hotter than average. These are monthly average temperatures from the airports on St. Croix and on St. Thomas, showing the consistently above normal temperatures that we've been seeing. And this is just the last 2.5 years, but almost every month, showing above normal temperatures, hotter than normal weather. In fact, last June, we tied an all-time record for the hottest June ever for the airport at St. Croix. So we have been seeing this. This is a big factor in drought development and intensification, as the higher temperatures leads to higher evaporation rates, more plant and crop water usage. And so we're losing more water. Even when normal rainfall occurs, sometimes we're losing more water than we'd like to see just through normal processes. So heat and drier dry seasons and later onset wet seasons have been a factor in these frequent droughts, especially over the last 10 years or so. As for the drought monitor input, we have some data coming in at this point, enough to analyze the map. We get coordination from the National Weather Service in San Juan. We also have a number of local observers, and any of you out there who are interested in taking weather observations, especially those in the farming industry, we would love to get more observations. There is a network that Mr. Peterson referenced, CocoRa's, the volunteer network. You use no electronics to it, so it's just a manual 4-inch plastic rain gauge that you read once a day and submit your report by phone or by computer. And Ms. Chanez has been really great at recruiting observers, but we'd love to have more. So for example, just looking back to December of 2020, you can see here's our 90% reporting observers, those who reported at least 90% of the time in December 2020. And these are all mostly new observers here, all except for 1 or 2. And this is extremely valuable information to get into our drought monitor process. We'd love to see more points on the map, and we love the fact that we've got all these new observers across the islands. This is across the north, St. Thomas, St. John. We've also got a number of dedicated 90% or more of the time observers across St. Croix. There we go. And of course, Mr. Peterson also mentioned the well data from USGS, US Geologic Survey, and that also helps to pinpoint times of drought. The records, reliable records for the well data go back to about 2016. So it's a fairly short period of record, but even within that 5-year period of record, you can really see some signals jumping out. The droughts stand out. Even the hurricanes of 2017 show up very clearly. So this is a very important part of the equation. We're always looking for more data. And as we look to the future, we'd love to unearth other people who maybe have taken weather observations for a number of years, maybe on paper. We'd like to get that data. We also love to get boots on the ground information, photographs, like some of the ones Mr. Peterson showed, especially in times of drought, and comparison photos. And then any other data you can think of where we could do percentile rankings, whether it's salinity, agricultural production numbers, livestock mortality in times of drought, wildfire acreage, and subjective or objective, whether it's mathematical data or just information and pictures. We do like to receive that as part of the drought monitor process to help us with the D levels, with the drought levels. And for some reason, I went backwards there. My apologies. And I believe that was that was my last slide. So anyway, technical glitches aside, that will do it, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Brad. Any question? And again, feel free to put your question in the chat on the Q&A. Any question for Mr. Ripley? Mr. Ripley, sorry. I have a question for you, Brad. You mentioned that the classification is basically a statistics based on percent of occurrence. So as we go into a drier climate, does that mean that our reference for what drought is will also shift?
Yes, it will shift over time. Some of these changes that we're seeing are fairly new, so it's not showing up real clearly in the data yet. We will be getting a new set of weather normals. Right now, we're using a baseline of 1981 to 2010. This spring, that baseline will change to 1991 to 2020. So that may change the perception of drought a little bit, just the way we do the percentile rankings for the weather and rainfall data. So that'll be a little interesting, but as long as we're looking at the entire period of record, that should account for the changes gradually over time as you add new data to the existing record.
Thank you. And really encourage everyone to participate in the COCORA's network. Please reach out to Ms. Chanes or I, but mostly Ms. Chanes. The more data that we have, the more definition we have, and the more information we can sort of have about what's happening on the east side, what's happening on the north side, what's happening around different islands. And once we have a better understanding, we can better anticipate. So please consider be part of the COCORA station. Thank you so much, Brad.
Yeah, there was one more question about using vegetation indices like NDVI.
Oh, yes.
And yes, we do look at that for the islands. So I should have mentioned that, but yes, we look at vegetation indices. Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much. So now the third participant for this World Water Day event focused on drought is Royce Quickie. So I will present my screen, and then Royce, you just tell me when to switch slides.
All right. It's a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for the invitation again. Thank you, Christina, for inviting us to present to you our effects of drought conditions in Bordeaux, and just for allowing us a seat at the table so that we can, possibly come up with some solution, and just for all the other little things that she does for our farming community. From our perspective in Bordeaux, the farmers in our perspective, we look out to the sea and we see the solution. And the solution is the ocean. We need constant water. My name is Royce Quickie. I am co-president, project manager of Green Ridge Guava Berry Farm. I'm the guy. Next slide, please. I'm the guy on the left, and the gentleman on the right you see is Mr. Myron Buddy Henneman. That's the creator of our farm. We were in existence since the late 1980s, and we do fruit orchards, crop farming, and we have a small amount of livestock. Farming in Bordeaux brings many challenges, but the most difficult challenge is having to deal with drought. And Brad indicated, which I didn't know, that there was a level of abnormally dry weather versus drought. And from our perspective, I can't tell the difference, Brad. Just to let you know. Next slide, please. What you see here is our life source. This is an earthen dam that my uncle built in 1994, and did it with his own money and with some help from Public Works, Virgin Islands Department of Public Works, and the Department of Agriculture. Next slide, please. And in 2007, we experienced a pretty bad drought in the Bordeaux area. So it allowed us the opportunity to expand and to remove the silt from the pond. So now we currently hold about 600,000 gallons of water in there. And 600,000 gallons of water seems like a lot, but if it doesn't rain for 40 days, it really it starts to scare you, and you realize that 600,000 gallons is not that much water when you have to run an operation. Next slide, please. All right, these slides are comparative slides to show when things are good, when we have adequate rainfall, we have nice lush vegetation on the left, and on the right is when we're experiencing some abnormally dry conditions, which usually occur like once or twice a year for us. What this has, what the drought situation has done for us is it's forcing us to adapt stronger conservation methods. Next slide, please. And again, you can see this is like these pictures you see are like 15 days of no rainfall. And we've been forced to, use ground cover. In many instances, we've been trying to drip irrigate the entire farm. We've been planting drought-resistant crops like dragon fruit. We've collaborated with UVI, and more pumpkins, more sweet potatoes, just so that we can survive through the drought situation. Next slide, please. We even tried the technological route. We partnered with UVI at CES, and we were trying to develop an automated monitoring and watering system using soil moisture sensors, which would activate when the ground is dry. And it was very promising. Next slide, please. It was a very promising project, but later that year, September, Irma and Maria came, destroyed UVI CES facilities, and in turn, it destroyed our prototype. So we're back to square one. Next slide, please. Here you see this is our prototype we were working on. This picture is actually a test day. It's a pretty happy day. It was show that it actually can work. And I'd like to thank Dr. Costas for his ingeniousness. Next slide, please. So as a result, we had to go back to conservation methods. We expanded our dragon fruit operation, and again, we're looking into jicama with cooperation with UVI once again, and it's a difficult process, but we aim to endure. Next slide. This is Pattaya. This is one of the the drought-resistant crops that we are instituting. Next slide. Pumpkins. And the next slide. This is a picture of our expanded dragon fruit operation. And what it also is, it shows is our solution in the background, the water. I strongly believe the solution to our drought problems as farmers in Bordeaux is desalination. We need a constant water source. And I'm saying this from a perspective that, look, I'm representing all of the Bordeaux farmers, and we're struggling. We're trying, and we're doing the best that we can. And I'm currently asking now, what can be done for us? Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. Any question?
Dr. Guanel, I have a question, but I just wanted to say to Mr. Royce that, you know, Insular Affairs here at the Department of the Interior will continue to work with the likes of Dr. Guanel, Christina, and, you know, Department of Agriculture to provide resources that can assist farmers like yourself, you know, because your impact on the community is what we see as economic growth. And we definitely need to support farmers like you and stuff. So just hold on. We're working through the rigmaroles, but more assistance is going to come your way.
Thank you, and I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, there's another question. Thank you. There's another question. Is there any option of using recycled gray water? So basically water that has been processed from wastewater treatment plant. Are there any discussion about with WAPA about that?
We inquired about it, the Bordeaux farmers, and there's a new facility in Fortuna Bay. So it's about roughly 2 years old, and it's from the developer. It's producing some pretty decent water, and I think that is something we can address. But there's an issue of lines and pumping water back up the hill to our tank facilities.
So
now, if we can get something done as far as that goes, that would help a lot, because we're looking at like 30,000-40,000 gallons a day that's being flushed out into the ocean.
Yeah, definitely. But some infrastructure has to be put in place. The same with the desalination plant as well.
Yes. Yes.
So there's a question about any inroads made for where the USVI can qualify to apply for funding to establish rural co-ops. So I know that the current CES director, Dr. Peterson, took some farmers to look at co-ops in the States from my recollection. Are there any movement to create co-ops in the Virgin Islands? I think is the question.
From our perspective, there is some movement. It's not enough, but there's some movement amongst organized farmers. Can that be a solution? Yes, but I think we need some more leadership from like government to push things along and make things happen. Farmers are very skeptical these days, and I can understand from their perspective. I can understand it's frustrating when you're trying to get something done and then you look for assistance and then there is none.
Yeah, and I can assure you that at UVI we're doing our best, and we do. And
I applaud UVI. I applaud Dr. Z. I applaud you and Ms. Chanis for all that y'all are doing. Without y'all, we'd be in the dark ages.
Well, thank you for saying that. I know that, as you said, CES and AES have been really busy supporting and doing what they can. But yeah, we can continue the dialogue. And as Dwayne Peterson, Mr. Peterson mentioned, we're also figuring out how to bring some funding to help. One last question before we move to our last speaker. So you mentioned that you're doing some switching from different type of crops. Is that something that all farmers are now thinking about? Is it an organized effort, or is it how is the switching going to different more drought resistant type crops? Is it easy?
That, first of all, that's not an organized effort. That's just something my farm, we're like trying to institute different things, and usually, it's a trickle down effect. I guess I'm setting an example, and when people see things happen in a positive way, they jump on board. So if I have to be the fire starter, I'll be the fire starter.
And that's a good fire. Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. So now we're going to have the last presentation by our colleague at University of Florida. Unfortunately, she had to jump off. So we will show a recorded presentation that is as good as the real thing. Michael, do you want to queue up the presentation?
Hello, and welcome to this presentation of the study, Agricultural Water Resource Management in the Southern Region. My name is Megan Donovan, and I'm from the University of Florida. This is a special presentation I put together where the spotlight is on the USVI data specifically. The study area is the USDA-defined Southern Region. The Southern Region includes 13 contiguous US states and the 2 territories, Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. Throughout this region, extension agents and researchers want to make sure that research at the land-grant universities addresses the water resource management needs of growers so they can farm successfully. To obtain this information, a questionnaire addressing the concerns and needs of growers in the region was developed and distributed to growers throughout the Southern Region in 2020. The sample selection of growers was based on the counties in each state with the highest irrigated acreage from the 2017 Census of Agriculture. The map here shows the spatial distribution of the acres of irrigated land by county in the contiguous United States from the 2017 Ag Census. Data for the US Virgin Islands was not part of this data set, so we relied heavily on collaboration from UVI Cooperative Extension and the VI Department of Agriculture to construct a representative sampling protocol specific to the Virgin Islands. Special thanks to the Commissioner and the Assistant Commissioner of Agriculture for providing the list of farmers in the Virgin Islands that served as our sampling frame. This was the conduit to allow us to complete the study, along with Christina's support. We are endlessly grateful for this collaboration, as it was instrumental in recruiting farmers to participate in the study. Furthermore, the collaboration was critical to establishing invaluable contacts in Puerto Rico. Thank you all so much. The purpose of this study is to identify research priorities about water resource management from the perspective of growers in the Southern Region. The priorities identified will be used to both develop new research initiatives and support current research and extension programs tailored to the specific water resource needs of this region. The questionnaire asks growers demographic information about themselves and their farming operations, and their insights about water resource management. The final sample includes 112 crop production growers from the Southern Region, both row and specialty, with 26 of those respondents from the US Virgin Islands. Unfortunately, the distribution of the questionnaire coincided with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. There were several unforeseen circumstances presented by the pandemic,
and ultimately our original sampling protocol was impossible to carry out as originally planned. Therefore, the results presented here come with the caveat that the sample is not representative, and due to that, it's not possible to draw reliable conclusions. However, these preliminary data offer an excellent foundation for further investigation. Here are some key demographics selected from the questionnaire results. Half of the respondents from the US Virgin Islands use rainfall as their primary water source for irrigation, while 72% of the entire sample use groundwater primarily for irrigation. Here you can see the distribution among the different water sources for irrigation for both USVI respondents and the entire sample. The USVI respondents are the yellow bars on the left, and the entire sample are the green bars to the right. A little over half of the US Virgin Islands respondents use drip irrigation. The next most common irrigation methods for the US Virgin Islands were traveling gun and spray with riser. This contrasts with the 37% of the entire sample using center pivot, 26% using flood or furrow, and 17% using drip irrigation. Here you can see the primary irrigation for USVI respondents on the left and the entire sample on the right. Most of the US Virgin Islands respondents use organic practices on their farming operation, but are not certified organic. Actually, the only certified organic respondent in the whole sample was from the US Virgin Islands. The sample as a whole uses conventional practices for the most part. Here you can see the distribution of farming operation type for USVI on the left and the complete sample on the right. The frequency column refers to the raw count of respondents, and the percentage column is the percentage of respondents within the USVI respondents on the table on the left side. On the right side table is showing data from the entire sample, and the frequency column refers to the raw count of respondents in the whole sample, and the percentage column shows the percentage of respondents relative to the entire sample. Both the US Virgin Islands respondents and the complete sample named leafy greens, watermelon, salad greens, and cucumbers as being the highest water users on their operation in the overall category of vegetables, melons, potatoes, and sweet potatoes. Here's a table showing what crops out of the vegetables, melons, potatoes, and sweet potatoes category that both USVI respondents and the full sample indicated that use the most water on their operation. Most of the fruit growers in the sample were from the US Virgin Islands. There were 9 respondents out of the 12 total in the sample that were from the US Virgin Islands. 55.4% of the complete sample named corn, and 32.1% of the complete sample named soybeans as the highest water using crops on their farming operation. When asked the most important priorities for meeting irrigation needs both at the present time and in the future, respondents from the US Virgin Islands named the cost of irrigating and declining water supply. This was consistent with the response from the sample as a whole, except the whole sample named regulations that affect the potential choices about water use on the farm as the greatest future priority. It's interesting that the cost of irrigating is the greatest priority now, but becomes secondary in the future, while declining water supply flips the other way. Perhaps that means farmers are worried about water supply, but they're not worried now. Just a question to think about. Let's unpack the important factors underlying these priorities. The most important factors related to the cost of irrigating at the present time for growers in the US Virgin Islands were equipment, that includes the purchase, maintenance, and repair, first, and both electricity or fuel and labor in close second. The most important factors related to declining water supply at the present time named were prolonged drought first and unpredictable rainfall patterns second. These were also consistent with the response from the sample as a whole, with the exception of labor named as one of the most important factors related to the cost of irrigating at the present time. Also, the other exception was that both prolonged drought and unpredictable rainfall patterns were tied for the top spot in the entire sample. When asked the most important priorities for meeting irrigation needs in the future, USVI respondents first named declining water supply and then cost of irrigating. The most important factors related to declining water supply in the future for USVI respondents were prolonged drought first and unpredictable rainfall patterns second, the same factors as the entire sample at the present time and in the future. The most important factors related to cost of irrigating in the future were equally equipment and electricity or fuel. Regulations that affect choices that farmers can make about water use on their farm in the future was the #1 factor named for the entire sample, but not named for USVI respondents. The most important factors related to cost of irrigating in the future, equipment and electricity or fuel, were the same factors the entire sample named for the cost of irrigating at the present time. USVI participants named damages to equipment and soil first and biological threats second as the most important priorities regarding materials coming onto their farming operation via irrigation. USVI respondents named sedimentation first and biological threats second as the most important priorities for farmers in their area when they make decisions about managing the movement of irrigation water on or off their farms. The most important damage to equipment and soil named was changes in the soil profile. Sedimentation, clogging of machinery, and saltwater intrusion were all tied for second place. The most important biological threats named were weeds first and human pathogens second. For the most important priorities for farmers in their area when they make decisions about managing the movement of irrigation water on or off their farms, the most important potential biological threats named were weeds and human pathogens again, although tied for first place. For the most important priorities regarding materials coming onto their farming operation via irrigation, agrochemicals were named a top priority for the sample as a whole, but not for the USVI respondents. Biological threats were named a top priority by USVI respondents exclusively. Damages to equipment and soil was shared as the top priority for both the entire sample and the USVI respondents. Clogging of irrigation systems was not a top damage to equipment and soil for USVI respondents, although it was for the entire sample. Again, agrochemicals were named as a top priority for the entire sample, but not for the USVI respondents, for farmers in their area when they make decisions about managing the movement of irrigation water on or off their farms. Also, again, biological threats were named a top priority by USVI respondents, but not for the entire sample. Sedimentation was named a top priority for both the entire sample and the USVI respondents. Overall, respondents named the water available to irrigate as the greatest water resource management priority overall. This was consistent for both the entire sample and the USVI respondents. Within all the water availability priorities asked, respondents' first choice was declining water supply in the future. Declining water supply at the present time and cost of irrigating at the present time were tied for the next most frequently named overall water availability priority. Declining water supply in the future was the only water availability priority named by both the sample as a whole and the USVI respondents. Regulations that affect the choices they can make about water use on their farm in the future and the cost of irrigating in the future were both named a summative concern by the entire sample, but not by the USVI respondents. Within all the water quality priorities asked, respondents' first choice was tied for biological threats coming onto their farming operation and sedimentation. Respondents' next choice was tied for industrial pollutants coming onto their farming operation, clogging irrigation systems, saltwater intrusion, and changes in the soil profile. In contrast, the entire sample named both industrial pollutants coming onto their farming operation and changes in the soil profile tied for first choice. The entire sample's next choice was tied for biological threats coming onto their farming operation, sedimentation, and saltwater intrusion. Overall, USVI respondents chose both increasing efficiency of irrigation and the development of farming practices to improve soil moisture retention equally as the focus of future irrigation research. The entire sample also named both increasing efficiency of irrigation and development of farming practices to improve soil moisture retention as the first and second focus of future irrigation research, respectively. Looking forward, we intend to redistribute the questionnaire to growers in the southern region employing thorough sampling to ensure representativeness of growers throughout the region. The timing of the initial distribution coincided with the onset of COVID-19, which obviously impacted our response rate. Additionally, we learned during the distribution that targeting certain areas in the region is more preferable at different times, relative to the ideal planting times for certain crops in these areas. We will take this into account moving forward. We believe the U.S. Virgin Islands would benefit from a separate study because of the unique water resource needs in the USVI. Also, farming is fundamentally different in USVI compared to the contiguous United States in the southern region, characterized by smaller acreage and tropical fruits, for example. This way, more accurately tailored research and extension programs to support USVI can be developed and implemented to further food security and sustainable food systems in this territory. Because of interesting trends shown in this preliminary data, we are excited to elaborate on this study further, and we are seeking additional funding to achieve this. Also, there is some potential for additional analysis of the existing data, although this is limited by the small sample size. Clustering methods are a possibility and could reveal interesting groupings among the data. Also, we will publish articles using the results of this study. Ultimately, the information from the drought program and the water quality components Christina is overseeing from UVI will be merged with our efforts to drive impactful small island development. Please reach out to myself, Megan Donovan, on the left, or Principal Investigator Dr. Marilyn Swisher, pictured on the right, with any questions, comments, or concerns. Additionally, you can feel free to reach out to Christina Chanas for USVI specific information regarding this study. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. Again, special thanks to the Commissioner of Agriculture, the Assistant Commissioner of Agriculture, Christina, and all of our collaborators from UVI Cooperative Extension and the VI Department of Agriculture. Mickey and I look forward to working with you all in the future.
All right, thank you. I'm sure there would have been, I have many questions, but unfortunately she had to leave us, Megan had to leave us a bit early. So I'm gonna give maybe Christina, I know that you had some difficulties at the beginning, so you were not able to give your introduction. Do you wanna say any words before we go to the question and answer?
I just wanna, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As far as the question with regard to SARE, Dr. Peterson has been working with about 30 small farmers, many of which I'm proud to say are female farmers, as far as the co-op, but due to COVID, a lot of the activities have been curtailed at this time. But if you want to get more information on the co-op activities with regard to Cooperative Extension Service, please reach out to Dr. Peterson, who I'm embarrassed to say is one of my bosses, and I forgot to invite him just because this was a lot, but his telephone number is 693-1080, 693-1080. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is that to the farmers online, Shelly, I think Rafe and Mr. Creaky, thank you for all that you did. Please remember that you're the heartbeat of these projects. We can't do this work without you. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but you are truly the force that gets the bus rolling. It isn't the university or the government, it's you guys kind of out there seeing what the problems are and then reporting that back to us so that we can work with the government. So please continue your collaborations and partnerships with us as we move ahead. And please know that every single person, you see 4 people speaking, and you see Mr. Rippey, who's been an amazing collaborator for UVI, but there are literally hundreds of people across the nation that you do not see that are all working very diligently to help us. And so on behalf of all of them, I just want to say, oh, Dr. Peterson is here. Oh, thank you for coming. I don't know if you can type in the chat about Sarah, but I love you. And I'm sorry, I didn't think to send you the invite, but thanks everybody for coming. And if you have any other questions, if you type it into the chat, Dr. Peterson can answer the SARE questions, or you can call 693-1080. And to all of our speakers, thank you so much.
And thank you, Christina. And Michael, would you mind maybe letting Dr. Peterson speak?
Sure, just give me 1 second.
Good morning, Dr. Peterson. If you don't mind,
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good.
Thanks so much for participating.
No problem whatsoever. I enjoyed the presentations, each and every one of them, and I was enthused by the information shared and all the collaboration that I sensed. Regarding the cooperative development movement, actually, as we speak, there's a lot of enthusiasm for the cooperative business development model, and we have a short course in progress right now. The short course has been going on since last year, December. It's a 2-year project funded by SARE, and the first phase of the project is really to make sure that all of the farmers who are interested have the tools that they need to learn how to develop a cooperative from A to Z, and that's where we're at right now. The next session is going to be on the 11th of this month. That's next week, Thursday, I believe it is. And the focus of next week is going to be taking all the tools we've put together so far since December. And the issue this time around is putting those farmers in groups. And the topic is, let's start a cooperative. So now that we've gone through all the basics, all the principles, all the governance issues, they are now at the point where they can, at least around a table, begin to brainstorm putting a cooperative together. The second phase is going to begin after that. In other words, in the month of April or so. And the second phase is going to be the mentorship phase. The mentorship phase meaning that those farmers who are serious about really developing a cooperative, we have a network of farmers across the southern US through the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, which is 53 years old at this point in time, as well as through the West Georgia Farmers Cooperative, which is 56 years old at this time. And they have afforded to us their membership, their experts to work along with all farmers who want to develop from A to Z a cooperative business enterprise. Of course, this was meant to be in person. So much for that right now. We hope that before the 2 years is up, we can do lots of in-person training, but it's on webinar online for now. I want to say 2 other things before I shut my mouth. One of which is that we know that the interest in cooperative development has been strong for quite a while, yet we have had lots of startups and lots of challenges in keeping them going. Therefore, on the 25th of this month, in between transitions from phases 1 and 2, we're going to have a panel discussion. The panel discussion is going to consist of persons who are members of the last cooperative we had in the territory, the VA Farmers Cooperative. And the issue is, what have been the successes, but also what have been the challenges in keeping cooperatives successful and alive? And what are some of the solutions going forward? So that's going to be brainstormed on the 25th of this month. So that going forward with the mentorship phase, we have more than just basic tools. We have real life experiences to take with us, okay? And I want to say something to Mr. Royce Creaky. I want to say something to the regrowing the farmers in Bordeaux through Mr. Royce Creaky. I have always admired their tenacity as well as their efforts to keep farmers organized, because that's a really critical part of rectifying all of the issues that we have here. And I continue to express that one of the tools that farmers also need, in addition to all that they're doing, is the cooperative business model, pooling their resources, not just to do, but to advocate for what they need. Having said that, I've actually asked one of the members of Regrow Fooding, would they be willing to be one of those groups that in the mentorship phase, we work with to help you develop some of the solutions, including addressing the water issues and challenges you have in Bordeaux. And the response was positive. And at this point, I'm going to just come to the group and speak to the group in general. So we are behind you. We have some thoughts, and we think that being even better organized, we can address the issues that you discussed, and we support what you do in the state of Bordeaux. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Hope that was helpful.
That was very helpful. Thank
welcome.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments about what Dr. Peterson just said, but also what we've heard today? So there is a question from Ms. Pot about the chronological list of drought at the beginning. Can you send the slide? I believe it's possible to send the slide. But just to let you know, the presentation we will send a link to today's webinar and to today's presentations. They will be posted on YouTube unlisted. So only those who have the link will be able to watch it again. But we will try to make available all the information that was presented today. And also a lot of the information that was presented today, some of it was created by partners outside of UVI, such as our partners at USDA and NOAA and others, but also within UVI. We are compiling all those data from all those sources, and they will be published in the next hazard mitigation plan for the territory. So that will be another source of data. And then as Dwayne Peterson mentioned, and Christina probably mentioned, the Caribbean Green Technology Center, we will try to, one of our main objectives in the coming weeks or month is to create a data portal where a lot of this data will be stored so that the public can have access to those data through the CGTC website. So yes. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Creaky, Royce Creaky. You said you guys are doing more of the drought-resistant crops. How did you decide on the types of crops to use or to grow? Is there is there a local demand for like specific types of crops? Like for instance, you said a dragon fruit. You know, growing up in the Virgin Islands, I never I was really never aware of what dragon fruit was until, you know, I became of age. But is there a demand for that dragon fruit in the territory, and what other crops are you using?
I would not say that there's a demand for dragon fruit currently. Most people here are like you, they're not very familiar with the fruit. Although the fruit is all around us, you know, people just don't really pay attention to it. It's something native to here, native to our Caribbean region.
Really?
And
Okay.
they originated really in South America, in Peru and Chile, but they were brought up to the Caribbean to, you know, the native quote unquote Indian population.
Mm.
So that's how, I mean, if you go in the bushes, you find them. You find particular breeds, but there is not, I would not say there's a demand for them yet, but I'm one of those farmers is like, look, if you build it, they will come, you know.
Okay.
It's quite a beneficial fruit, and I think that if it's introduced properly to our area, it will take hold.
Okay.
So I just want to potentially, if I may, continue on that answer of, yeah, dragon fruit are very popular, you know, the islands in the Caribbean, and they actually are very expensive, high demand crop.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, so I would say that Mr. Creaky, you know, really commend you for your trailblazing effort here, and you know, there can be a very strong demand for this type of products. I know in other islands there's been, you know, a lot of reports, you know, related to thefts in farms because they are so valuable. So
yes,
we don't have that problem yet here, thank God. But
they're highly popular on the other side of the world, on the eastern side of the world, in Vietnam and the Philippines, and
right,
you know, they're like they're a staple to the diet, you know.
Yeah, and that's where I was actually introduced to dragon fruit when I went over that side of the world. But it's good to see that the VI or the Caribbean is using it. So that's good. But Dr. Guanel, your background picture is a perfect example of drought in the territory. Because it's brown,
Yes.
and every time I travel to the Virgin Islands, I hate to see it just dry, just like that, you know?
Yes, yes. And
But it
and I
also
think
shows the
maybe
importance.
next year for our World Water Month Day, we will talk a little bit about the ecological impact of drought. And I don't know if our colleague Chris Hale is still there, but we do have a fair amount of folks in the audience who are working with us on a project looking at ecosystem services, which are benefits that we derive from ecosystems in the Virgin Islands. Viewshed is one of them. And the question that we will ask eventually is, as we move to a drier climate, what happens to our ecosystem and what happens to the services or the benefits we derive from them? Because as Mr. Rippey mentioned at the beginning, we're shifting to a different type of climate. And so this will have some repercussion, both positive, but also negative, as you mentioned yourself in your presentation about, the viewshed and the tourism. So yeah, no, it's an interesting thing, and I'm really glad that we are kicking off this conversation at a large scale.
Right.
There's a Q&A. Let me see if the question, the dragon fruit can be an export product. I would, Mr. Quickie, I'm sure that your customer base is local, but is export something that you have considered?
Absolutely. This is something we've been collaborating with Dr. Zimmerman over in St. Croix, and he's doing a study to see the viability of it for something we could export. And I'm kind of like jumping the gun a little bit because I feel that it is, and I'm going ahead, so to speak. That's why I've expanded my dragon fruit field, and I intend to be the king of dragon fruit.
If I may, dragon fruit exports for about $25 a pound per Puerto Rico pre-storms. And also, Mr. Creaky is one of 6 farmers that we are working with to reinvigorate the Pattaya project with on behalf of Dr. Z. And that is actually a part of the drought tolerant component with jicama. And also, I believe they're going to do sweet potato.
Okay, any last questions? We are about time. Just want to thank, let me just check the Q&A one last time. So we answer this question. Let me check the chat. Okay. Well, it seems like there was a lot of, oh, Chris was there. Hi, Chris. There was a lot of good discussion in the chat as usual, and there was a lot of conversation. So thank you to all the panelists, all the presenters. Thank you so much for taking the time to discuss this very important topic and to kick off World Water Month here in the Virgin Islands. Thank you to Christina. Thank you so much for doing all the work. All I did was just showing up. But thank you so much, Christina. And thank you to all our attendees for taking the time to receive this information, participate in the discussion, and ask really good questions. We have some upcoming events coming up. We will make sure to send you all the invitation to our upcoming event for World Water Month in March. With that said, wish you all a great afternoon and a great rest of the week.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.